Interns trying to figure out what was that?
It's saying, begin recording.
Oh. The first thing on the agenda is that everybody has a copy of the new rate card, since everybody was asking me in large groups of people as to what the rate card needs to say. I thought I could get away with just doing the order, but everybody tells me I also have to do the rate card too, so I said, okay. And I thought it would be better just to give you guys what the new rate card is going to be here as opposed to emailing everybody separately. Hey, you got the rate?
And yeah, email would actually be helpful too, so we can, if you have a template in Word,
Yeah, I do.
that'd be great.
I just don't have an email for all of you together at one time yet. That's what I'm working on in terms of having an email that I can just send out to the industry. I don't have that group set up yet. I'm working on it. Otherwise, I have to send you guys individual emails, as you saw before. It takes a little time in terms of that.
So I was feeling special.
So, oh, you want to feel special? Is that what it is? Okay, I get it. In terms of today, I had my notes from the last session, and I think I want to have a little bit more discussion on some of the stuff that we thought about possibly wanting to change and see what your ideas are on those so that we can develop some kind of draft for you guys to review. I think 450 was one of the ones that we looked at. It dealt with the medallions and what kind of medallions we need to have. And there was discussion as to the possibility of having an electronic medallion as opposed to one that's an actual physical medallion. What are you guys feeling about that at this point? And I think that you guys wanted to go into the future in terms of possibly doing electronics as opposed to doing actual physical medallions.
Well, when the technology presents itself, we'd like to be able to get to that point, which is why I think, George had even brought up that the fact that it says it's a metal plate,
Right.
that, some other language in there, or, whatever the medallion is whatever you designate it to be.
So right now it's a metal plate, but
So,
a year from now.
we could say metal plate and or any type of manifestation that identifies
Device
the
approved by you
cab
guys,
as
or
somebody under CPC. But I'll use the term more other medium unless Dan wants to correct me or Keith wants to correct me.
Or digital representation thereof, or
Yeah. We can do that. That should be pretty easy. Because if we put it in now, it'll be ready for the future. And as long as I put a lot of ors in there, that's not a problem. So then we can do that as opposed to, I like to do one change as opposed to then going back and say, okay, we want to do it this way, we want to do it that way. So if we make it inclusive, it gives us options. 453 was the requisite insurance, the address, and all that stuff. I said something. Was insurance. 453. Possession. Let's see. By the way, we had a meeting of the Committee on Sunset with the legislature to possibly either consolidate or discontinue or do things like that. And what the committee ultimately decided by a majority vote was that we are going to have an interim study as to whether or not we need to consolidate or do other things of that nature. I would presume that no one has a problem with that, and the interim committee study will be done through the Joint Committee on Infrastructure in the next legislative session. And what we told them was that we all have all these problems that we have to solve before any of us can decide whether we're going to get together or not get together. So they're working on their stuff and we're working on our stuff. And if you have any questions, you can ask the legislature. Because what do I know? Okay. 23, certificate qualifications of applicant investigation. This deals, I guess this deals with the applicant themselves. The burden of proof, clear and convincing financial stability. Well, this is for certificate holders. It looks like. Why did I see something about insurance on that one? Fire insurance. Were we trying to require insurance on that one?
I didn't show from our perspective that we had any changes to 453.
That's why 453 is a change in terms of require insurance address. And we're supposed to look at the NTA application because I guess their CPC and stuff was more robust.
Yes, that was.
That was, yeah. And monopoly requirements according to what I have here. Okay, we'll deal with that one with Kimberly. 462 was the multiple licenses, and it dealt with the review. How we review it, I guess. We probably have to look at the NTA materials in order to see what we're going to do with that one. 469 deals with family member transfers. I guess because whether or not they can.
I don't know, but I'll get you one.
Invitation of someone approved. Look at the application. Do we need a new application for a family member if they want to take over a part of the business?
Yeah, we thought it's one of the issues we raised because with an internal, like sometimes the transition or the equity plan, estate planning kind of happens in phases as opposed to a fail. Here's everything. And I've spoken with Chief Aquino about that as well already. And as far as typically what he would anticipate doing would be if they've already been approved by a TA, they would probably do a truncated investigation kind of to update what they've previously done to make it current, to make sure like there's no convictions, things like that.
On that family member.
Yeah, on the family, on the recipient.
Because I would presume if there's no criminal background on that individual, then if the family is a problem, then we wouldn't have licensed them in the first place.
But that's the hope.
That's the rub.
Have you seen our board?
That's being recorded, Mike, just so you know.
476 was notification of the administrator of a complaint concerning a driver or independent contractor.
Yeah, I think
The
we
question was 2 days versus 5 days.
Yeah, we asked for the 5.
5 business days notification, monthly lists. I think it was just something about having monthly lists of,
I think it was the duplication of notifying when they're immediately terminated and then also having to do it at the end of the month again.
Yeah, I think, do we need both?
that was the discussion.
Yeah.
The consensus, I think, among the operators was that we don't need both.
What happens sometimes is we'll terminate a driver, maybe a no call, no show, and then turns out the driver was granted time off. We had missed it. Now, because we have to notify you immediately, now the driver has to come back down here with a new referral, get their TA card reinstated.
Because we would suspend the TA card. if they don't.
Right, because we notify you, so when you guys get the notification, then their permit's no longer valid. So there was a little bit more of a window, I think that would be helpful.
Why don't we just have the 5 business days and take out the monthly? $78. A dispatch log. Is there such a thing?
Oh, digital.
It's digital?
At least.
So we need to change that to make it digital?
I mean, if
It's not a paper like the trip log.
The IP
paper
phone
anymore. They're not
does it automatic.
Yeah.
Well, the computer does everything that is within the NAC right now. I mean, it dates and timestamps, when the call comes in. It shows the vehicle number that's servicing the call. It shows everything that's in here right now, even though it's digital. I mean, it doesn't necessarily say on here it has to be paper. I mean, a log is a digital log. I mean, I know our system at Cabot, and I'm sure everybody's does, records all of that data, so.
Well, if we wanted access to your dispatch log, how would we get access to your dispatch log?
You'd have to go to Cabot, our dispatch facility, and they can pull it up for you and any specifics that you would need.
It's a Captain is our technology provider for that as well, so. Same
with the
reporting.
curve. They just
So it's not-
pull up what date frame you're looking for.
So we would come to you guys in order to get the information, right?
Yes.
Well,
Well,
yes and no. We have access to it, but we don't speak on behalf of our clients.
okay, what would
So
be, what would be
the cab company has access. You could direct us. to
Right,
do
the
it.
technology is there, we can provide it.
If it's not that serious, we can pull it off the BIM phones. They're all automatic without going to computers. If you're using a Cox service or anything like that,
I guess the question, the only people that would be interested in that would probably be investigations, probably.
right?
And so what would be the procedure for an investigator to come and get that information? Who would they go to and well, kind of walk me through it. I don't know.
They would just contact us
Yeah,
and
they
say,
call
hey, we
dispatch.
need to know about a call that came in during this time frame, and we would just retrieve the data. It's-
We're gonna
More
request
detail,
an
then we go to
administrative
Yeah.
subpoena, and then we'll give them.
Oh,
the
you want to
information.
administer the subpoena?
That's what we always ask for. If we just don't, because we don't know, it could be a spouse checking up on our husband or wife or anything, so to verify, unless it's coming from the taxi cab authority
That's what I think he
request.
was asking.
I'm asking one of our people.
Yeah, if you guys ask
Yeah,
them.
the general public, we don't give out that information, but
But if we ask because we're like at the middle of an investigation or something of that nature that you need to know something, how quickly can you get that information to our staff?
Immediately. for
Minutes.
Look at the screen.
Hey, I'm new here. I'm just asking questions. Okay,
Just look at, we can pull out on the computer screen.
okay, cool. That's cool. Filing crime against driver or independent contractor on duty, notification of certificate holder, dissemination of information concerning crime, participation in the secret witness program. I had a note on here, it looks like independent contractor putting through the meter. What does that note mean, Carl? How do your ICs report problems they have in the cabs? Is it the same way your employees report it?
We don't
Yeah.
have any.
It's the same.
yeah.
Okay, I'm an independent contractor. Do they have to do it, or is it something that is optional for them?
I don't have any.
To what?
You don't
To notify us if they're having a problem?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even the employee drivers, if they're having a problem with somebody, they can let us know, and we'll send out road supervision, metro, whatever's necessary. Or if they think they handle it on their own. I mean, that's the individual's choice that's in the car, whether it's an employee or an independent contractor, either one. The only thing that we had on this section was nobody is participating in the secret witness program anymore and hasn't been for
Should they?
years.
Should they?
That's up to each individual company.
I don't think Was there, I can't remember a time where we've ever used it.
Right, I can't think of any time. we either
Decades ago.
reported-
Yeah, before we had the technology and the cabs that we do now, where literally all there was the green distress light and all
Right,
that.
yeah.
You know, back then, before cameras and everything else in the cabs, you know, we'd all get together and, you know, if a driver was assaulted and there was a
question
TA
you were-
report, that kind of thing, but
Question
it's been
you're
a long time.
referring to, was it independent contractors have to abide by the same laws as the employee? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I think it was the secret
Should,
witness.
should we remove 3 in terms of the secret witness program in general, in terms of just not having it in there and not even worry about it? Since it doesn't seem like anybody's using it.
Well,
Why
and it
is it
also
like that?
requires that we have a sticker on the outside of the cab, which we haven't used in years as well.
Yeah, let's take out 3. Pretty 3. Crashes. Crashes and accidents. That's always been fun.
We don't have it.
That's not what your crash avoidance system says when it lights up on your screen. It says crash, 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 crash. It doesn't do that, right?
Our system doesn't say crash, but.
Contact imminent.
Like I said, the problem is what is our definition of a crash, and what is the definition of what triggers what in terms of when people come out,
Well,
who has to be
I
inspected, and that kind of stuff.
think every company's a little different. At our company, our drivers are instructed anything other than air is considered an accident.
Well, that's what the rig said. It would be nice to change it if a guy at the airport opens the door into another, to the cab, to not let everybody come out, or when he touches the mirror, you know? Right now, we all come out for that.
How sensitive are your systems?
You mean the cameras?
Yeah.
Oh,
How
some are
sensitive are your
G-forces,
systems?
some
Because
are-
when it's dispatched back, how sensitive are they in terms of saying that there's a problem that you guys have to respond to?
I don't think you can rely on the camera trigger
No,
to
'cause it's
determine an
By
accident.
G-force,
Yeah.
by G-force or by button.
And
So if it doesn't create 3 G-forces, the camera ain't working unless you got a 24/7.
Since our drivers are just like yours, they're required to report contact
Yeah.
with anything. I mean, even the foldable lane dividers, valet
Yes.
signs, no matter what it is, a
Yes.
curb. I mean, anything that they touch other than literally the surface of the road and air, they're supposed to let us know about. And then we send our road supervisors out. Now, because the TA had been short-staffed, a lot of times, you know, what they've been doing is sending pictures to the TA, and then, you know, the TA is deciding whether or not they need to visually inspect that vehicle before it goes out. And the road supervisors for everybody are so well trained that, you know, they can tell, you know, on the dumbest case scenario, if the vehicle's not operable and it has to be towed, obviously the TA is going to want to inspect it. But if it is, you know, just a bumper scratch or something like that, you know, they know that the driver can continue the rest of his shift. And if TA wants it, they'll let us know and we'll hold it before the next shift. And that's worked out, for us at least, very well, because it's allowed our drivers to continue working without having to wait for TA to show up. And then the driver's losing all of that revenue time, you know, waiting for Metro. And Metro doesn't even show up unless somebody's near death anymore. They just don't.
But much if you don't have 500 damage or more.
How do they know?
Oh, I had, I'm not rich like everybody else. I go myself. So I had bikes pull up, the Metro cop. Just exchange information, he leaves. That's happened many times. Now, if it's unserious, obviously, he does what he's supposed to do.
But it's very cumbersome if they hit a curb or if they
Yes.
hit just a little, their mirror attaches a construction cone.
Mirror on
involve
mirror is my
everybody's
worst.
time.
Mirror on mirror, I gotta go out there for, you know, and everybody's had it, you know, door open and hit the mirror. The mirror's fine, and they still gotta do everything.
So how do we streamline that in order for it to be better?
Well, and
I mean, I would
actually,
say
it's fine by ear.
if there is no damage, no injuries reported,
How do we determine damage? How do we make the determination of what damage is? I mean, I know I'm being super technical here, but.
well, like in
I'm
Mario's example, if the driver's going through the pit and hits the mirror of another cab, neither cab's got any damage. I
Door
don't,
on door, when they open the
Right.
doors in the pit, they panic. I'm like,
Right.
come on, it's a door open. The scratch is not gonna make a difference on the safety of the vehicle.
I mean, I guess that requires some trust on your part that we're going to do the right thing, and we are going to, because we're legally responsible too. We're going to want a report from you if there was any damage.
You're about to say something.
I was going to say, yeah, I think you kind of, if we shift the reg as opposed to it, have to see every crash, see any vehicles that are not capable of being operated in a safe manner, safe and roadworthy manner, and then because that covers, like, obviously if the tire is blown or something like that, you're gonna have to swap out the tire or something minor. Technically, it's not operable at that point, but if you're just talking like door ding, where doors open, mirrors touch, they backed up into a sign that doesn't do anything major to the car at low speed where you're not going to have anything.
Yeah,
Rolling up on the
especially-
cab stand, I mean, that happens
Right.
almost
Right.
every
Right, I was gonna
single
say,
They
day.
don't have the
Cab
brake
on
on.
cab.
Yeah.
Where they,
Their foot
bumper
just
taps
kinda
happen all the
relaxes
time.
on
The
the
cab
brakes
line
and
driver looks
everything.
down, look at their cell phone while they're staging, and they tap the vehicle in front of them.
What do you guys do when that happens?
Oh, we come out.
Well,
Oh,
most
it's a whole, it's an accident.
It's the
Yeah,
whole,
it's a
it's
accident.
everything. See, there, I got a hold there because you could always have the driver in front of the guy that just got hit, play possum dead, so you gotta go out. That I would, now if the guy signs the release, again, it's all over with, but door and door.
Give that cabbie $50 and they sign that medical
There you
release
go.
in a heartbeat.
Man, I'm up to 75. How you
We're
guys?
75 too.
And you're the rich one now.
We're right there too, Mario.
I know. I just-
We don't give up the money that easy at our company.
Yeah.
They got to fight for it a little bit.
Hey, you guys got free legal. Sorry.
He's not free if you saw what he gets paid.
But that for ending, I get it. You got to do it. But door to door, there's so-
Door to door, scratches.
these hotels
let's
use
say-
the valet signs and all night. I hate the valet sign.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. They changed the way in which a taxi stand is configured, because I saw one time in which Caesars did a change in the way in which they configured a taxi stand, either because of the number of people that were in it or whatever the situation is. And maybe the driver was not familiar with whatever this new configuration was, hits a cone or hits something that they're doing in terms of using it as their traffic control. When you hit that cone, then you go out, right?
Still
Yeah.
call it. And it ties you, even your office, it ties them up. I'm sure, well, unless they're.
And I think we all do it to protect ourselves too. We don't want that, the property or the driver thinks making it worse than it actually was. So we want to document it ourselves.
Especially at the airport, that cone could cost $200,000.
And just to let you know, like,
You're joking, right?
Two.
There's a markup at the airport.
Two
let's just
plants
say
and a
that.
sign. 2 plants and a sign should be like $300. It was over $2,000. So,
There's some markup at the
yeah,
airport.
for sure.
Those FAA rags get real expensive.
So,
I just want to try to find a way to make it easier so that both easier for your staff as well as easier for my staff in terms of doing what they do. But I don't also at the same time want to compromise the safety of the passenger, safety of the traveling public. And that's a no-brainer in terms of a situation like that. But I think we have to come up with some kind of definition of what minor is.
So how
that
about-
caused this to come out?
no damage, no passengers. I mean, like for us, that would, even though we counted it an accident, if there was no down, like if one of our cabs bumper taps one of Cheryl's cabs, there's no damage, there's no passengers, we're probably gonna leave it as an incident unless the driver's had a few other of these, so we're not gonna really treat it as a,
Should we make it a situation in which, as long as there are no passengers in the vehicle, because we do also have concern about the driver too, depending on what happened, because if the driver shows injury, then we need to be concerned about that.
well, I still go out for a release. I'm not gonna, unless we're not in the front. If I'm in the front, yeah, I go along with that. If my driver's in the rear,
Uh-huh.
I still go out to get a release from the driver.
Yeah, we'll have to go out. It's
Yeah.
just
right, we're gonna
where
still
that
do,
line is, whether or not we have to notify you guys.
Right.
whatever you decide to do, it won't change
Yeah, we still
our
have to.
way of dealing with them. We're still gonna send somebody out.
It's just holding that car down, waiting for the gate to come
I
out,
mean,
waiting.
that's the part that I think you guys are concerned about.
Yeah.
Your concern is that, then once we go out, then we can use our discretion in order to, as to whether or not we're going to put that car in service, keep that car in service, or take the car out of service. But we have a situation now, I believe, that also our dispatch can clear,
Yes.
clear them too. That's another thing that we've allowed to happen
Yep.
in order to make it work better.
There's no passenger.
And that's worked
PA doesn't
really
come
well.
out. I do it all
I
over the
agree.
phone.
That's been a
That's
that's
been
been a time saver. A
A
huge time
lifesaver.
I do everything over the phone unless somebody gets hurt, then TA comes out, the officer comes out.
And who makes that call as to whether we come out or don't come out?
I ask, is anybody hurt? If they're hurt, I call everybody out. It says cab on cab, driver on driver, no passenger, nobody hurt. I do it all myself and then I submit it to my phone. They clear it through the phone. But the thing is, the 20% of it, the door dings, the mirrors, if you can eliminate that for not doing it on the phone, I wouldn't even go out to those, right? So those are the ones that we could submit off.
Right, and there's already some things in place, like if it's leaking fluid, you guys want to
Right.
come out, things
Yeah.
like that.
So those are the ones you can take off. Everything else shouldn't move from where it's at.
Okay, but I guess I'm fixated on the cone. You hit the cone.
Well,
You
door to
do-
door.
I mean, I'm talking about they do traffic control, they move the cone, and you guys hit the cone. You guys go out on that one, but do you want us to come out on that?
Right, that should be where we should do it in-house. I mean, we don't have to call really anybody to hit a delay sign. I mean, there's no liability there. If the property wants a sign, I'll go buy them a sign. I mean, nobody would even have to get involved, right? But anytime you have a lawsuit, something involving people and injuries, that's different. That should stay the same. I've had officers come out for a mirror crack. I mean, pretty sure that's a cut, dry case right there. I mean, it's the other person's mirror. I'm gonna buy him the mirror. It's all wrapped up.
But
Why?
Well, for example, if it's your mirror, then that could be an issue, because that could be a
Right.
safety
Now, I
concern.
always gotta
'Cause
take it back.
your mirror, because that means,
We're not
that
gonna
means
drive
it's
with a broken mirror.
yeah. You know what
We're
I
not
mean?
gonna let the driver go out there and drive
Yeah.
with a broken mirror.
Right.
We'd still have to switch them out, or,
Do
So
something.
those are things.
which we already do.
Damage greater than cosmetic? I mean, would that be a way to go about it?
I was thinking something, but I don't know whether I should suggest that. An amount, put an amount on it as to what the damage amount would be, but I'm scared about that because sometimes damage you can't see. Because if I say damage less than $1,000, I don't know whether, depending on what the accident is, whether or not we could frame damage, because one of the things I was seeing when I was in personal injury was that sometimes cars are more injured than we think they are. Especially if you
Especially undercarriage damage.
you may have undercarriage damage, you might have linkage damage, you may have things that you would not be able to visually see unless you took it back to the shop and tore the vehicle down.
Right, but an investigator's gonna be in that same boat when they come out.
Right, they won't be able to see it, but the thing about it, would you want an investigator to, I don't know, but it's a caution, take that vehicle out of service?
No, I mean, I can, just speaking for ourselves, we have a terrible vehicle shortage problem. And so anything that the TA could help to keep our vehicles on the road would be appreciated.
As long as it doesn't impact safety.
And the driver's gonna know if there's an issue, they're gonna say, oh, well, there's a problem with my cab, I gotta go back to the yard.
If it doesn't drive right or something of that
Right.
nature, if the linkage got hit or something of that nature.
Right, if there's anything leaking, we're gonna tow that vehicle, we're not gonna let the driver drive it back.
Now, would you be calling one of our inspectors, or would you be calling investigative staff relative to accidents?
So that's an inspector. That's what I would do. When I can't clear it over the phone, they were happy with that.
Yeah.
The
Right, they come to the
inspector's already
yard.
coming, so that it just sits there until the inspector comes out.
JJ?
You always have the option to try to buy our office.
True, forgot that one.
We train our dispatchers to look at minor accidents or whatever, so they can clear off too.
They clear them, I mean, just over the phone most of the time with the road supervisors.
Send pictures, that's
Yeah.
fine. We clear, that's 90% of the
Yeah,
accidents.
it is.
If they can't send us pictures, send them by dispatch. Dispatch go downstairs, look at it. They know how to do it. They've got a tablet. They can, if it does have a 24 issue or whatever, they can issue it right there and you're back on the road. But if it's got damage, we need to look at it. If it doesn't have damage, I don't need to see it. Because it used to be 90% of the accidents we went on. And just my end alone, 20 accidents in a day that I gotta go do, along with my inspections, that makes for a long day. And 90% of those accidents are no damage found. It was a waste of time. And we created take a picture, send it to dispatch. We don't have to go out on all those accidents anymore. Today I had none. That's the first time in a long time.
That system does work. It really does, taking the pictures and sending them in.
It's been awesome.
And basically, they can bring a car by dispatch to get it cleared also. If the investigator redlines for your distress lights or whatever, they can always bring it by dispatch, and once it's fixed, they can clear it there. Because my guys were on from 3:30 to 7 at night. But after that, you guys are open till 12. Yeah, they can bring it by dispatch can clear minor things like that. That's always an option. We're trying to make it easier so, you guys, your cars aren't held down so long.
Yeah.
I'm pretty desperate. I meet them wherever they want me.
Mario, bring them.
I go to desert, I go across the
You've
street.
seen them? What's Mario doing down there?
I only got 75 cars in
He can too, same thing.
it.
Yeah.
I just-
Yeah.
I run them wherever I need.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is a bad one. 46. That's the bane of everyone's existence in terms of what I do and what I say relative to color schemes, other things of that nature. I had a question about some of this in terms of why is the statute so specific? Why does the numbers have to be a certain size, and why does the stuff need to be this, that, and the other? Who was the anal retentive individual that did the statute?
That would be our legislature.
No, actually, it's an agency, so it would have been some smart lawyer. Why so specific? And I'm asking for a history lesson right now. I don't know why.
I've been in the industry over 30 years, and I think it's always been that way since I've been in it, so.
A lot of phony business going on back then.
This was last addressed and changed or modified in some way in 2002.
So this rule is 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. And it was originally 1971, so that's back when the cab wars were happening in the late 60s and early 70s.
'Cause I remember some of the things that I've heard and seen from people is size of the letters, where the stripes need to be, where the credit card fee needs to be.
That is an NRS.
These are the things that cross my desk every day. Okay.
That credit card language is actually a statute. That threw me when I found that out. I just assumed it was an NAC, but it's actually in the statute. It has to be on the front door, and it's like,
Why does it have to be on the front door?
that would be a legislature question because they do the NRSs.
Well, we need to do a BDR, then we can do a BDR that possibly changes that.
I think we're all trying to make our vehicles look more professional. In the old days, we had so much stuff on our cabs. Inside the cab, we had a meter, mobile dispatch transmitter, a radio. And so we've all kind of cleaned things up, and it would definitely help if like we didn't need the credit card. I mean, everyone knows there's a credit card fee. I mean,
And the credit card fee is on the rate card too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Inside the cab.
Yep.
So does the person need to know that there's a credit card fee of $3 on the outside of the cab if I'm trying to get in the cab late at night, or can I read it while I'm going to my destination?
and it's also if they would go to run their credit card, it's broken down exactly everything that they're being charged through, the excise tax, the credit card fee. So a customer at that point could say, you know what, I'm going to decline it. I'm just going to pay cash. So there are multiple times. It's kind of redundant.
It shows on the screen before you make a payment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reason why they have the sign there in the first place is to alert you that there will be a fee. So there isn't a fight that you have with the person after you're trying to settle up. So how do we notify the person that, by the way, there's going to be a fee? And where's the best place to put it, or do we care?
I mean, it's right on.
It's right. It's not the rate card. The rate card is in the cab,
Correct.
in front of it.
Right. And if they go to your website, it says it. I mean,
Is there something about fees? The public needs to be notified of fees. before they make a transaction,
Because I think it deals with the issue in terms of the statute dealing with tariffs and things of that nature. Anything that someone's going to be charged.
I don't remember
and
taking a
needs to be done.
complaint for that, though.
Huh?
I've never gotten a complaint for that. You guys getting complaints?
I've gotten a few over the years, but it's,
Usually the comment will go to the driver and
I've never.
person
gotten a call
complains,
or-
swipes his card and moves on.
I mean, when they go to a casino and they're going to use their credit card, they're accustomed to this stuff. And $3 doesn't seem so bad sometimes.
On a casino is about 6 to 9. so
Right.
If you're on the strip.
Okay. I think we need to look more closely at 486 in terms of saying what exactly we need and what we need to put in. The other thing is that any cat tax cap found in violation of this section dealing with the letter and all of this stuff can be taken out of service by us in terms of that process. And I would presume you don't like that in terms of any wraps or anything of that nature that you have, because those are one of the things I think we have such provision that specifically deals with wraps and things of that nature that we have. But it's gotten to a point with the wraps that you can't really tell what kind of cab it is. Because there's so much noise dealing with the wrap that your name is like, what do I call it? Subsumed by the wrap. If you see some of these wild wraps that they got going,
But the cab number is visible.
the cab number is visible. That is true. That was the other thing I want to talk about too. I want to talk about numbers on the top of the cabs.
So never, since I've been in the industry, I can't tell you one time that I know of where Metros
Let me
used
ask you a question.
and give me and I actually showed this video to Cheryl yesterday. One of our vehicles was stolen.
Yes, it was. It was stolen by an individual. I read that in the paper, and I got chills.
And here's the thing,
how did Metro find that cab and chase that cab?
Well,
Did you use helicopters on that one?
we were giving the Captain Technology, it pings every few seconds. We're giving, they never caught him. They didn't catch him until the Utah police caught him.
But didn't they say something about him disabling the GPS somehow?
Yeah, he
How
did.
did
He,
he-
Eventually.
he ripped out the DT5 and everything else in the cabin.
Where did you drop the woman off?
Yeah,
Right
it's
there
a mile
on
away.
Flamingo.
What? The video I saw, she went to the side and I never saw her get back up.
Yeah, he asked her like, "Oh, do you want to get out?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." As he's already hit 3 cars. And,
Well, I had one where in New York, the guys just pushed the driver while he was smoking a cigarette. Of course, the Hungarian guy appeared to spoke English, took off.
Mhm.
Well, later on with Metro, he was at a bar,
Mhm.
and I brought him all there through my phone, and then he took off. And we got in the cul-de-sac thinking they got him, and now they're all guns drawn. But I didn't know he stabbed somebody in the neck in New York, New York. They forgot to give me that little bit of detail. So he told me to step back. Well, GPS is what got him back out Arizona Charlie. I mean, not the helicopter numbers. I mean,
Okay, so how do you do that? Do you guys give them the GPS information,
The
or
one
is it
guy
something?
said-
How's that work?
one guy stood with me, and,
Uh-huh.
and we were reading, and he kept telling him where the car was. But, he was at 90 miles an hour, so they backed off, cactus all the way. So they backed off until he parked it. Well, when they parked it, still, I'm sitting at that same corner with him.
Mhm.
And then once he parked at Arizona Charlie, again, I didn't know that he stabbed someone in the back. And that's when they got them in Arizona, Charlie. That's the technology they use today.
So we can GPS it.
In area, like,
Okay.
we could look up at any vehicle
Same thing.
exactly where it's at this
How fast
moment.
he's going.
How fast they're, who's the driver. We could even listen into the vehicle to find out what's going on in the vehicle without anybody knowing.
I don't get that noise.
Say what?
I don't get that noise.
Well, it's a good way if a driver accidentally hit the distress
Oh, yeah.
button, we can listen in, it was an accident or not. If he's talking about what time the fountains
Sure.
go off the Bellagio, then we know the driver accidentally hit the button by accident. But if not, then we're sending everyone out and we're sending the road supervisor and we're going to make sure the driver's okay.
Do you have any data from Metro as to when they actually used the feature of using numbers on the top of the cabs?
I don't think I can tell you,
Never.
never since I've been in the industry that I know of, has it ever been used once.
There was a question about the top hats that are on top of the cabs. Can you even see numbers if those top hats are triangles? Can you even see a number?
Oh, they make us position them that way so that the numbers are visible,
Right.
or else.
And
we can't
the
get-
letters are, I mean, it's a big expense too, to give the decals for that, for each vehicle. And
I think, yeah.
I mean, I could see if it was going to be used, but this is so much better.
The technology has changed significantly since that board order was first issued.
And I think maybe JJ said at one of the meetings that they want it in case there's more than one vehicle at an
That's
intersection.
correct. Like, let's say you have two Whittlesey cabs, they look the same, they have the same wrap on them and things of that nature. Question being is, if I got a helicopter or whatever I have, how do I distinguish the two vehicles, one of the two vehicles, the vehicle that I'm interested in versus the one I'm not interested in? Because I don't
Well,
want to follow the wrong vehicle.
But if it's a helicopter, they're going to be above and this pings every few seconds. They're going to see what direction it's going. They're going to know what vehicle it is.
And we also have the decals on the hoods. You know, they're on the hoods. They're already on the hoods. So you're more likely to see the hood than you are the roof.
Well, I would like to know just when Metro would actually send out a helicopter, because we've had kidnappings, we've had assaults, we've
Never
had
happened.
shootings, and not once have they responded.
You know, I got carjacked one time while I was training. Chief Aquino met me at the airport. I thought for sure they were gonna use the helicopter since we rode down to 15 to Prim.
They saw you were in the vehicle.
I
They said they weren't going to send anybody for you by some of those things.
I mean, the chief, I don't know if he remembers that or not. We met at the airport. I was like, out of all places, with a trainee, really? But, you know,
So we have a number on the hood too, right?
that's like 45 minutes. You'd think they would have something. They don't use it. They don't use it.
No, the numbers.
We don't have ours on the
Go ahead.
hood anymore.
What was that?
On the trunk.
Say it again? There's a number on the back of the truck. I know that. Yeah, I know
It's
that.
not on the hood.
The hood or the roof.
No.
Or the top sign. It's not the hood and somewhere else. It's
That's
one or
true.
the other, usually. Some cars have it on the hood, but when they got wrapped, they had to put it up on the roof or the top sign. That's why they might have two sets of numbers. Because I've had to put cars out of service for having the number on the hood, they took the wrap off, or the advertising company put Lucky Cab signed on yellow cabs, and now they've got a 2500 series number up on top of a yellow cab. That happens all the time. That's not their fault, that's the advertising people's fault, but we have to correct it. No, he doesn't know nothing about it. It's just, we had to get the advertising company to come over there and fix their mistakes. You know, because you got 2500 series numbers on a 3300 series cab. But it's one set of 18-inch numbers, not two. If it does have two, it was for some other reason, because wraps or something. Because the wrap usually covers the hood. And when they take the wraps off, they put the number back on or it peels it off or whatever.
So what's the solution to the problem?
No numbers.
Yeah, I still think that the GPS technology is our best bet for tracking a vehicle.
If that, yeah, that helps with the disablement of that. But this particular individual that you talked about,
Mike, you only have them on your meters? You don't have your GPS buried in the motor?
We do, yeah.
So even if they would have to rip the car apart.
Well, they ripped the meter out, and that's what killed it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I kind of how did he know to do that?
Our GPS is in the, underneath.
The driver had at least the driver claimed he had a cell phone and a tablet in there too that were missing. So I think he realized that it could be tracked through all that stuff and threw it out the window, I imagine.
Pretty suspect. It was last tagged over on Sunset.
Yep.
So
You
obviously
guys
he knew
also
what
had
to
that
do.
one that, another incident, cab got in a wreck out on the South Strip. And I went to go do the accident on it at the company because they couldn't find it the day before. My guys couldn't find it. And I looked for it, it wasn't there. The next day I come in and look for it, it's not there. And I asked about it, nobody knows nothing. That's the one you guys had at the tow yard for 3 or 4 days, didn't even know it. And the driver comes in, take another cab, nobody knew where the car was. And if I didn't say anything, how long would that car have been there? I think that cost you $1,500, get it out of the tow yard.
When was this?
This was, I don't know if it was this year or towards the end of last year or something. Yeah, because I actually had to go in the shop and ask them. They had to search around for the car. Then they had to go in through the office, try to find out where this was, because it was involved in an accident on.
Is that the one where the vehicle flipped?
I'm
on the
not
side?
sure what the damage was. Might have been.
Yeah.
But it killed the battery or something.
Yeah, I think it was because, we didn't, even- the driver couldn't call it in because he was injured.
Yeah, inbound or something.
But even that case, are the helicopter numbers going to help you find it in the tow yard? Come on.
There's a question, anybody ever asked the police what they say about all this? Or do I have to ask the police?
I'd be curious to know what their criteria is and when they're going to use the helicopter because
I'm not asked the question, it ain't gonna kill nobody.
Well, I thought that question was asked to Metro.
Anybody asked the question of
I
Metro?
mean, who was it at Metro?
Board meeting, I reported that. As far as, I talked to one of the sergeants that runs that program out there, one of the sergeants does. And he was of the opinion, his opinion, that it should be maintained. Obviously, for the obvious reasons that have already been stated here, which is number one, if there's more than one vehicle involved, they're out on the boulevard searching for a vehicle. Obviously, if Air One is up there looking for the vehicle, they'd be able to spot the numbers very quickly.
But Metro didn't say they'd be willing to take over the cost for maintaining them, did they?
No, I do not say that.
And Chief, do you think they're aware of our technology now that we do have?
I did, actually, I ran that past them as far as the capabilities and the technology of the cab these days, and he said that, well, we can't rely on that 100%. Again, him going back to the actual vehicle, if you have several that are surrounding similar vehicles or light color, whatever the case may be, they can't tell you can't tell them which car. We can just tell them what area it's in if it's being tracked by GPS. So he took a pretty strong stance on it as far as, no, we like the numbers. And how
You've
I
probably
think
never
that
seen 'em.
conversation is, we'll be coming back to you guys at some point. So whether they have data or not, that's something that we obviously can obtain if they have it.
Why not put just putting the numbers on the back of the cab?
Well, they're not going to see that from the helicopter.
You could, depending on which direction you come from. I'll table this one because I want to have a discussion with somebody higher than a sergeant about this.
What one are you looking at now?
192. Taxi cabs, mechanical standards, and special equipment. everything the taxi cab must have. Any question on this?
We don't have carburetors anymore.
Don't have what?
Carburetors?
Oh, sure don't.
You have newer
I think
vehicles.
Oh, stop it.
I think they have fuel injection. Should we amend this, JJ, I think, in terms of, huh? This whole thing or just part of it? Should we get rid of it?
1986, I think. So,
So last time it was, actually, it was revised in 2016 for some reason. I don't know what. was
the last
revised.
carburetor not injected was last manufacturer was 87, 86. We're close.
We just need to revise this one, take some of the older stuff out of here. What about the,
They're used to having the buttons.
everybody needs a truck that.
I guess we
is
can
up
have the
on the inside.
Camrys.
I think it was the straps was one of the.
Straps are tied down the
Yeah.
trunk.
Yeah.
When did they used to, you guys used to have those, didn't you?
Well, we used to have, well, some companies still have sedan type vehicles. Some are totally SUV style vehicles. So if you're going to leave it in there, then I would just say, if there's a trunk, I mean, I don't have straps in any of mine. We've got hatchbacks.
Right. It used to be, you had to make sure you had the bungee cord with.
Yes.
Bungee cord, but that's for the stand, like she says, with the trunk, that's when they, I don't know, they overload the luggage, you have to have a way to secure the trunk so the luggage doesn't fall out.
Yeah.
But they have had incidents where that's happened.
Now, JJ, do you remember this was, years back? We had gotten and we were still using the Escapes then. And we had some Dodge Caravans. And there were stickers that were put on by the manufacturer in the upper part of the windshield and the lower part of the windshield. And it was like Ford, blah, blah, blah kind of a thing, And we were forced to remove those factory stickers from our new cabs before we put them in service because we were told that it could impair a driver's vision because it was actually on the glass.
Yeah, what was the sticker? What did it say?
It was something that Ford had put on, all the cars.
Yeah, that's just what we do. We make them take any stickers off. It's not the way the law.
Well, the reg is, all windows are operable, free of obstruction, and the driver or independent contractor's view is not impaired in any direction. To take it to that extreme, though, is that really a safety issue? If there's a manufacturer sticker put on the vehicle that is, just says, inspected by Ford or whatever it says, I forgot what those actually said. Why would a manufacturer put something on a vehicle that would impair a driver's ability to see out of the window of the vehicle?
They expect them when they do their PMI at the dealership, that's when they take that crap off. It's just like the hubcap, they don't come on the car, they put them on the car at the dealer. But those are just like your sales slip, it's on the side window too. We take everything off.
Well, obviously that. Okay, I'll just let it go.
No, we try to keep the windows as clear as possible, because if I was driving the cab and I hit something, I'd be blaming it on that meter blocking my vision. And as it is with the car that I drive, the side posts, man, it's a big impairment. But we try to keep the windows as clear as possible. The administration had given them the permission, the lower right corner, that they can put their Cabot or Herb or whatever sticker. We try to keep the windows as clear as possible, just for, there's no excuse for hitting anybody. That's not my decision.
Taxi cabs, two-way radios requested by telephone for service. Do we have two-way radios in the cabs?
We do.
George does in some of his.
I think-
We don't
We
in
do,
any
too.
of ours.
We don't have
Nobody
any.
uses them, but we do.
Yeah,
The DT5 acts like a cellular phone, so.
Send signals or whatever. It gives, more explanation on the radio. It doesn't have to be a radio itself.
It could be,
A device that sends something. I think it says that in there.
okay. 486 deals with transportation for elderly persons and persons with permanent disabilities. I think there was a notation that they possibly take this out in terms of asking an elderly person their age.
That was the consensus last time we all talked.
Yeah. But otherwise, the statute's okay. Right? One of these seven. Take out the term chattel mortgage. And then 501 is the lights on a taxi meter. And the lights, these are lights on top that show whether the cab is in service or not in service.
Whether the meters on or not.
Whether the meter is engaged or the meter is not
Right.
engaged. Do we have a problem with the colors of the lights? With all the different lights and things that are on vehicles, do we have problems with the lights at this point?
The cheater lights that are around.
Yeah, any one of the lights.
I think you mentioned somewhere that they're amber now.
Yeah, that's wrong. Yeah, the electronic taxi meter connection amber light look at the rear window taxi cab and light which is visible. And the light must automatically illuminate when a taxi cab meter is not in operation and is considered part of the meter. So there has to be some device for us to know whether the cab is engaged or the cab is not engaged.
That's your cheater light.
Huh?
It's your cheater light.
And we have problems with that one, is what I'm saying.
I
Huh?
don't have them.
Huh?
No, there's no problem.
There's no problem with that?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a light that shows that the cab is engaged? If that light's not on, then that shows,
When you see the cabs, the big orange light in the back, that
Yeah.
means that nobody's in the cab. If it's off, that means someone's in the cab, the meter's out.
okay. So something about updating the language in this thing. Something about the language is not quite right. I'm not sure what it is. And you know what, number 3, dealing with an inspection issue. What are the cruising lights?
The top light up on top of the car.
And what's that for?
That it's a cab during the nighttime.
Uh-huh,
So you can identify that it's a cab on the road at night
okay,
during the nighttime hours.
okay. Any other problems with 501? In 504, we're going to take out the term transmission. That we only seal it at the meter.
Is that the one that says seal the meter for the transmission?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a speedometer cable down there anymore. Toolbox.
Right. Five, 10 trip sheets. They need to be electronic as opposed to,
You guys have a way to request an electronic trip sheet from any of the companies that use the Captain system. That our cab drivers only carry a trip sheet. It doesn't have any of the detail. They have it just for, keeping their own meter readings and that sort of thing. So, I mean, you guys can still confiscate it. It's not going to give you any information.
Our drivers don't have any.
Yeah.
You guys just have a slip, right?
Yeah.
They just get a shift ticket to know what cab they're driving.
Well, they can get it on the screen if they want.
Yeah.
The driver wants to show the officer it's on the meter. Or if the officer wants to go further, they can call us and we can electronic. We email it.
Yeah.
That's what they
When
request
you,
now.
for any of the captain, using captain technology, they actually email captain. Captain sends us an email authorizing us to send it to him.
And they send it to enforcement.
Whoever investigators requested it.
They do that for us as well.
And I can't remember the last time that's happened since flat rates.
True.
Pre-COVID, I think, we had a couple, but
Yeah, it's
nothing since then.
rare.
Yeah, the whole long haul situation was why most of those were requested.
Electronic and hand request. One was too specific. Displaying of the permits. They wanted to, left it at the rate schedule. Do we need to put it at the left of the rate schedule, or can we just put it someplace else? Just as long as it's displayed prominently so that the passenger can see it in terms of their permit display.
Works for me.
If you don't have their permit, then we can redline the vehicle. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
If they don't have the permit.
Technically,
The car.
they can't operate the car. They can't operate the car.
Right.
But the car can still be operated it cannot be operated as a taxi, but it can be operated as a car to move from one place to another, right?
Or I should be able to bring that car back to the yard and send another driver out in it. Why is that car gonna get redlined?
That's what they
Because the
usually do.
previous driver,
They call us to come and pick up the car.
Yeah, because that's a waste of my time too, to come down and clear the car.
Yeah.
That sometimes happens where drivers come in here to renew their permit and then they find out there's an issue, then we have to send a tow truck rather than just, then we have to get the driver back to the yard as well.
Yeah, this would be an issue if the individual owned the vehicle, but the companies own the vehicles. So we would come get the car in that case.
And if they're an independent contractor, do they still have to have the, if they're not off duty, do they still have to have the permit in there?
Well, if they're off duty, they shouldn't have the medallion on the side of it either.
Oh, so you have.
I mean, we tell our lease customers that anytime that medallion is on the car, the lease medallion, the TA is going to assume that you're on duty. So if you're using the car for personal use to go grocery shopping or take your kids to school, remove that lease medallion, because that way the TA is going to assume that it's not a service vehicle. But if that medallion's on there, if they pull you over, that medallion's on there, you better be logged into the meter. Right. So.
and for us, we don't allow them to use it for personal use.
Yeah, so anytime they're in, just like ours, anytime they're in the vehicle, they're using it as a taxi cab, which means they have to have a permit on them.
The statute and the regs say it's a taxi cab is a taxi cab is a taxi cab is a taxi cab. You don't use it for personal use. If you want to use it, you use it for that. I know that there's a dichotomy that exists in terms of whether or not you can use it for personal use or not.
That's not true, because like if I
Yeah,
gotta
it's
take
up to
it to a
the
body shop
company.
or something, I'll take the medallion off and I drive it to the body shop. An officer's not gonna stop, where's my permit?
Yeah, but it's not fixed with the medallion.
Then it's just a car.
Because if I need to go to AVI, again, I do everything myself, I'll drive that car to the airport for an AVI sticker. Won't have.
Yeah, you have no other way to get it other than to take it
Right.
there.
So I take the medallion off.
What are we looking at?
Trying to figure out what exactly you could use a taxi cab point where they can just pull the medallion off. It becomes just a regular vehicle.
Right, JJ?
What do you say? When you take the down off the side of the car.
If it's a company doing company business, like you say, you're taking it to the body shop, that's no issue, it never has been. In the past, and I'm going back 40 years, we used to have something that we put in the window, not in service. Cops do it too with their cars, not in service at this time. We can, when you're transporting
I
a
got
car,
the out of service.
we can do something like that.
Yeah, we do that with some of our driver training and stuff,
Yeah,
just put the
yeah,
notices
and-
in.
Yeah,
and-
they used to, when you train drivers, there used to be
Yeah, I got
something in
that.
there, because you used to have to drive a driver around there, yeah.
Right, and we do the same thing, but it's more for the driver who just forgot his TA card. He's out there, totally spaced it, and now he realizes he doesn't have his TA card. To have that vehicle towed back is a waste of time for everyone. The driver needs to go back to the yard, there's no
Can they
question.
call in and verify that he's got a valid TA card at the TA to avoid that?
That would be great.
Well, I
And
mean,
then have him go and drive and pick up his TA card wherever it is?
Right, and most of the time it's back at the yard where it's forgotten in the cab the day before and
or left
next
it in his
driver.
personal vehicle. It
Right.
shouldn't redline our cab.
Right.
Is
it just
the
doesn't make
thing. I mean, the
sense.
bottom line is, it's not the vehicle itself that has an issue, it's the driver.
Right.
I mean, that's no different than if a lease customer doesn't have his lease. You know, a lot of our lease guys will go ahead and take pictures of their active lease in case they, forget and they don't have it in the glove box, so that they can show the TA that they do have their active lease and it's on their phone. I mean, we've had them do that even with their driver's license and TA permit, just so that they've got it on their phone, and can show that they really do have a valid driver's license. But that vehicle shouldn't have to be redlined. If a lease customer doesn't have a copy of his lease, they can call us and we can send it to the TA or have the driver come into the yard and get it. I mean, it seems kind of like you're punishing the vehicle when the vehicle hasn't done anything wrong.
It's true. People didn't do anything wrong. But should the driver have to go all the way back to the yard to get their permit or wherever they left their permit or whatever? Because technically this would have it in the car at all times anyway.
We would require them to have it. We wouldn't allow them to work without their
Yeah.
permit
They have to
physically
show it.
on them.
Absolutely, they can't
Yes.
they can't pick up passengers without it. We're just saying we shouldn't have to send a tow truck to go pick up the vehicle when the driver can just drive it back
If he's
themselves.
got a valid driver's license, he should be able to drive it back to the company.
Right.
And as the enforcement procedure, that's what we do, Administrator, is that he has a valid driver's license, he does not have his permit in his possession. We just simply send him back to the yard to get his permit.
Yeah, advise the yard that he's coming in, not to let him take any more rides.
Right, in respect to the medallion, over the years, we pulled over vehicles that didn't have a medallion. Obviously, that's gonna cause some suspicion on our part to pull over the vehicle. A lot of times when we do pull over the vehicle where we didn't find a medallion, they simply either lost the medallion, somehow came off, it got stolen, or they forgot to put the medallion on. We've also stopped vehicles that purposely did not have a medallion, and as such, Mario had described that the vehicle was going to service or something like that, and where we would just pull over the vehicle, check to see what's going on, and then we move on. So we always look at medallions or no medallions on the car as a consideration for some sort of enforcement action or not.
Let's say someone's driving around, doesn't have a TA permit on it, but they pulled the medallion on it. What would you do?
Say that one more time.
Somebody pulled a medallion on it, doesn't have the TA permit, they're driving around in the vehicle. Would our enforcement staff stop that individual?
Without a medallion?
Without a medallion, without a TA permit, would we stop?
Yes, yes. Obviously, the initiation of the stop would be, they see a vehicle with no medallion, they do their investigation, what's going on. They'll obviously ask for a permit and driver's license. At that point, would be sent back to the yard. There'd be a supervisor discussion with the company stating those two things, and maybe they know something that we don't. As far as why is there not a medallion, why is this guy doesn't have a permit? One that brings to mind, there was an individual that was stopped, wasn't stopped by us, it was stopped by Las Vegas Metro, where the vehicle was actually stolen. Didn't have a medallion. The officer asked for a permit, didn't have a permit, called the supervisor, we don't know this guy. So it turned out to be, actually, he took the cab, and moments later, they found out that it was taken on somewhere in the downtown area. And the guy ripped off the medallion and threw it away.
Let's take the following example. Lease driver has their kids in the back of the car getting ready to take their kids to school. They take the medallion off, they don't have their TA permit on. What does our enforcement staff do in that situation? Do we let the person go because it's not being operated as a taxi cab, or do we write a citation roll to that situation?
I would they would call me and I would instruct them as far as most of the companies we know don't have that. They're not allowed to use that vehicle for personal use. So I would instruct them to, if they're close by the home, just bring the kids back home. But if they're close by the school, you might as well get the job done, deliver the kids, and then deal with it right there and then. My first instinct would be to make sure the kids are somewhere safe, and then we could deal with that. And in this case, he's not supposed to be using his vehicle. Does he have a permit on him? If he doesn't have a permit on him, we're going to call the company and have the company possibly retrieve the vehicle, depending on what the company wants to do at that point. Because it's being not used as a cab, but it's being used as a personal vehicle. So it's a lot of moving parts to that question, but that's how I would handle it. Get the kids to safety first, either back home or to the school if they're nearby. But if it's a situation such as if a driver is on his way to work, he's a lease driver, he's got to take his kid, it was an emergency, he's got to take his kids to school, and then he's going to report to work. That's where I'd use some officer discretion. I understand how, hey, emergency came up, you're dropping your kids off, and now you're going to report back to work. Try not to do that. I would probably call the company as well, let them know that a stop was made, and that there was some liability there on possibly the driver's situation, having kids in the car, unauthorized. So a lot of moving parts.
As you heard what he just said, using the car for personal use may end up running you into problems with my enforcement staff. Now, with that being said, because the officer would have a right to investigate the situation because there could be problems in terms of what we're talking about. But is that a situation in which the officer, for example, gives a warning because it's allowed that that if you're a lease driver, you can use it for personal use? Or should it be a rule that you don't use it? A cab is a cab is a cab is a cab, and you don't use it for personal use. We need to resolve that question because it also affects how my officers deal with the situation.
If the driver has his permit, I mean, we're getting way off topic. This topic is whether or not there's an actual valid driver's permit with the driver. If he's got his permit with him and he's got his lease contract with him and he's using that cab for personal use because they pay for mileage, the only thing that the TA should even consider doing is issuing him a ticket for high flagging because he's got people in the back of the cab and the meter's not on because he's totally legal to have that vehicle. That would be the violation. Am I correct in that? That you guys would consider that high flagging? He's operating a cab as far as you're concerned,
Right.
but he doesn't have the meter on.
As stated by the law.
Yes, so he would be high flagging. Okay.
However, we would investigate that ride, again, taking the kids to school, whatever the case may be, an emergency, we would have to take that into consideration.
So if I just tell him that if he's going to take his kids to school, that he needs to turn the meter on because he's paying himself. I mean, it's not like he's stealing from me, because he pays me a fee and that cab is his for the 6 days. But that would alleviate your issue. They could still use it for personal use, but if they're transporting their kids, if they're by themselves going to the grocery store, you're not going to pull them over for anything unless you think that there's something wrong. But if he's got people in the cab, even, he needs to just go ahead and turn the meter on. And that would satisfy you.
Then there's no violation.
If it doesn't have a medallion on, that alerts the investigators. That's a red flag to us.
Okay, so there's no medallion on it, and he's just going to the grocery store by himself. You guys pull him over, you see he's a lease guy. He's not on duty, he's not logged into the meter. And is that a problem for you?
That's potentially a problem. Cab is a cab is a cab, right?
I don't know that that's necessarily true. That's why we're talking about this.
Sure, I understand. But we're going to pull that cab over no matter what, right? And so whatever the situation presents, right, if there's no medallion there, obviously we're going to pull it over. We're going to ask him, is he working or not working? And we've not had too many of these instances that I can recall right off the bat with the lease program that was initiated. So,
So literally, as long as the medallion is on the car, you guys would have no reason to pull the guy over.
right,
Right.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. You wouldn't have a reason to pull it over.
And it wouldn't.
So if the lease customer is just leaving the medallion on, then that's going to start, you guys would have no reason to pull him over unless there's a traffic violation or something.
Yes, or you have people in the car.
That's what I'm saying. If he's alone, I've said that 3 times already.
Yeah, the only reason would be if he had people in the car.
But if he's told that if he's taking his kids to school, he would need to turn the meter on, you would then again have no reason to pull him over. Okay.
Red flag.
Right.
So where did the discussion end up then?
There's no reason to redline the car.
Yeah, that's what the whole thing was about, was
For this
redlining the
argument-
car.
For this argument, we don't redline the car, but at the same time, the question being is that, okay, I'm going to put it to another point of view. Another point of view is I'm that driver. I lease that vehicle. I get that high flagging ticket. I'm going to leave pissed off because I don't want to come down and see Mr. Rickard over there about a high flagging ticket.
No driver likes getting a high flagging ticket.
A high flagging ticket because I got to see him because I just got a citation, but I thought my lease agreement said that.
There's no
I
such
can do that.
language.
Well,
There's no
see,
such language in the lease
or no
agreement.
lease, by state, if you have someone in the car, you're
You're operating as a town.
you're not cheating her because she just leased on the
Yeah,
contract,
right.
but you are cheating the state because they're not getting paid under trips charge.
So if all they have to do is keep the medallion on it and turn the meter on, if they
That's
got
it.
their kids going to school, then there's no problem.
Exactly, yes.
Well, that's, I don't know.
But now can we get back to the point at hand that the cab doesn't need to be redlined? That's what this is all.
I don't have a problem with the cab being redlined, that particular point, as long as we take the medallion off the cab in order to move it to wherever we have to move it to, because whoever is driving it, if they don't have a TA permit, let's say, for example, we do this, that you send another driver to pick up that cab and drive that cab. And they have a TA permit and everything is copacetic. That's not a problem in terms of keeping the medallion on, but if we have a non-TA person.
Like one of our
that's driving-
servicemen or
Yeah,
one of our
yeah.
shop guys, and you want
Yeah,
that medallion
yeah,
off
yeah.
of it.
I want you to pull that medallion off that vehicle. in order to take it
Now
to-
put a memo out there.
in order to take it in and do whatever you're gonna do to it. The only reason why I say that is because there's a question that exists as to whether or not it's in service or not in service. You know what I'm saying?
So our
Sign in the
mechanics-
windshield that says not in service.
Yeah, as long as the mechanics remove the medallion, then nobody should have an issue.
Yeah, with a sign in the window saying.
Yeah,
service
cool,
hours.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Because I've never
not
seen
gonna
it.
matter if it's on
To
the
be honest with you, I've never seen a not in service sign yet, but maybe they do exist.
It just sits on the front dash.
Oh, okay.
Not to muddy the water, that also comes back to 6450. I
Okay.
just want to bring that up. If we go to digital medallions,
Yes.
that also creates a problem whether the cab's in service or not in service.
If we have a digital medallion.
If we remove the physical medallions altogether.
Oh,
from-
if we remove the physical medallions, let's say we have digitals. The digitals should have a way to be able to turn them on and off. There shouldn't be a problem. in terms of
That's why I
the
just
digital.
bring mine with me.
That's where a cab becomes a cab becomes a cab.
Yeah.
Because now there's no way to determine that unless someone's logged
Physically
in.
doing
Certainly,
that.
yeah.
This is, yeah.
Sorry, just I circled back around and I was like, wait a minute, physical medallions and digital ones, that makes things interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for muddying that water.
For your consideration.
Even further than it already is. Uh, Five 43. Standards of conduct. Form number 11, keep a complete and accurate trip sheet. Yeah, number 11 is going to go in 453. In 543, it has to go. It'll be accurate trip sheet, but a trip sheet can be electronic, and we would have access to that trip sheet.
Number 4.
I have something about 6 people in the cab, or something about that. Number 4 has not permitted more than 5 passengers in the cab.
There are 6 passenger
but
cabs.
it's in conflict with the NRS, because the NRS says 6.
Yeah, they got changed up to 6.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is change that to 6. Six, conditions of employment, independent contractors and drivers. Everybody must have their driver's license with them somehow, some way, in terms of what's happening, and that causes a problem if they don't have the driver's license, because the TA permit feeds off the driver's license, because if you don't have the ability to drive, then you can't be a taxi cab driver. 46, I think. I think we wanted to provision under 1A, we wanted to put that on the taxi cab driver. We didn't want to put that on the companies in terms of them notifying you as to whether their driver's license is in effect or not in effect. Because that was always a problem in terms of checking as to periodically as to knowing whether someone's driver's license is appropriate or not. Because I believe you guys, we all check when we do the renewals and we do the initials, but nobody checks in between really. And the only time you have a check in between is if somebody has an accident or somebody has a problem.
With anybody's using the captain system, we put their expiration date in our system, so we notify the driver about a week before that if they haven't updated their driver's license yet, and if it's expired, we can't print.
But also, you don't get any information.
We're talking in between.
But you guys get no information from DMV that specifically says, let's say a driver's license is 3 years long, and let's say in between I catch a DUI, but I don't tell you guys that I caught a DUI, and there's no internal check unless we hit those benchmarks.
Well, we require our drivers to submit DMV printouts twice a year.
I mean, but what happens in between that?
Yeah. So I mean, you can.
I'm saying somebody might not be totally truthful with you, because technically what you want, if somebody gets into trouble, you want them to submit to you, they got in trouble. But some people aren't as honest as most things. So how do we deal with that 1% of individuals that aren't that quite honest? How do we deal with those folks? Because those folks can't drive if their license gets suspended. But if they don't tell you about the court appearance or whatever, how does anybody know anything? And we don't have the right to run DMV just willy-nilly. Either you, the company, or we as the authority don't have the right to run it, except when we run it for the renewals, or we run them for.
I think the
actually, we do find out if they're cited for something,
Yeah,
because
the officer makes a stop, don't
the
fight.
officer will run them at that point.
Yeah. And I've had it happen. But just like you said, I was sitting at Bellagio and, hey, this guy got a DUI like a week ago.
But he didn't tell you.
Well,
But it's his responsibility to tell you. That's the reason why I think we want to put it on the driver. The driver should have an affirmative responsibility that if there's a change in status of their driver's license, that they need to notify their companies that there's a change in status. And then you guys take whatever action is necessary. It shouldn't be a situation in which I tagged the company because you didn't know that Joe had his license suspended. I don't think that's fair for me to do that.
No.
But it is. Yeah.
It's, writing a policy that affects 1% is usually not.
Yes, 1%.
Yeah.
even if you put it in there, it's not gonna help.
It's it's not gonna stop anyone, but it gives me teeth when I have to do something. That's the key. The key to the game is that making sure that if we have to take action in order to stop other people from doing it, that this is not something that we want everybody to know we take it seriously. You need to have a valid driver's license at a minimum to drive a cab.
In that situation, he's out of the industry anyway. I mean,
And I think this might have been discussed last time, and I think there was an issue where they would prefer a TA rule as opposed to a policy because of the independent contractor situation.
Right, and I think that we do need to amend that particular one, and specifically say that we put the onus on the driver to notify the company that this is the situation. Because if we don't have that rule in, then they can come back and say to us that, well, there's no rule that says that I gotta tell you about what's going on, even though common sense, which doesn't work in most cases, says that they should do that. We know in law, if we don't have it in law written down and in bold letters, people will find ways to say that since you didn't say it, I shouldn't have to do it.
Yep, I'm very.
So that's the reason why I want to change that. I want to change that and put that on the drivers, putting that on the company. But then once you get notified of that situation, I would expect you guys to take whatever action is necessary.
Because we're liable. Right?
Yeah.
We're not about to let it. Yeah, we're not allowed. Oh, you're suspended while driving. Here's the key start taxi cab. No.
But that's what you're saying, right?
Can't get their stuff. So
Not
find
knowing.
them a week before.
549 says I have problem number 5. Each certificate holder shall provide an appropriate, accurate, and operable time clock. I don't think so. I think I need to toss number 5.
Well, what number are we on?
Number 549. Number 5.
Yeah.
I think I need to toss it. I think that went out with the door.
Yes, went out paper trick kids.
And then 551, search of the vehicle after the trip, disposition of property found. I think this is one of the times in which when we stop a vehicle, we want to see if the driver searched the vehicle for any possessions of the passenger or whatever the situation is. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't do it. I think we talked about
It's really not fair to the driver. It really isn't. They do the best they can, but especially when it's busy out, they're dropping off, doorman throwing somebody else in. It's really not feasible sometimes for a driver to check after every ride.
So when should they check?
Well, definitely at the end of their shift, they need to make sure that
If there's property in the cab, then they need to turn it in at the yard, right?
right. And depending on what the item is, I mean, we instruct our drivers to call it in immediately. So when the people do call in, we know if the driver has an item, and if the driver does have an item, we're going to ask the customer if they want it delivered, or we're going to charge them for it.
So it would be better to just do that end of shift in terms of that, so that we don't have that as a violation. We just basically
Well,
say
the
that.
reason we do it like Mike says, is because I've had incidents where a driver doesn't say nothing, and the guy had the phone ping and followed it to the car, and then big fight started, and the phone was in his glove box, didn't notify us, and that's why I terminated him, because he was trying to take the phone. I'm talking like that, right? And that's why you want the driver to call, because now we have a log. Wait, the driver was not trying to steal your phone because he called it in. Or
Okay. Let's say for example. Okay, let's take an example. Somebody left their phone or some personal item in the cab. Okay, you get the new folks into the cab. The new folks then say to the driver, "I see this phone. I see this wallet here. Hopefully, they're honest." What does the driver do when that information is made known?
Notifies dispatch.
At that particular point, he's supposed to notify dispatch and says, "This material was found in my cab, and in the shift, I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to secure it, and I'm going to then give it to whoever at the end of my shift."
9 out of 10, we already got the call that, hey, I lost it.
If it's an expensive item, we tell our drivers to bring it to the yard. We don't want them to be responsible carrying around.
Do you have them bring it to the yard immediately, or do you
If
wait
it's
till the end of the shift?
If it's an expensive item, we will And with the DT5, we do have, the driver has the ability to put that information in the DT5 and notify central dispatch that they found this item.
Then when they turn it in at our facility, they turn it into a shift supervisor, and the shift supervisor inspects the item, makes a detailed list of, like, if it's a purse or a backpack or something like that, of what is in it, and gives one copy of the receipt to the driver. The other one we maintain with the item. And then we have our internal log, and if somebody calls our facility, says, hey, I left a black backpack that, had this, this, and this in it, and we have that item, then they can decide if they want us to ship it FedEx prepaid to them, or if they're still in town, if they want to come by and pick it up, or local, or we can take it to the hotel, but they do pay that meter fare for us to transport the item to them, in a cab. And then they have to sign that they've received the item back. And after 30 days, with the exception of credit cards and IDs and cell phones, if it's like a backpack full of clothes, we offer that item back to the driver if it hasn't been claimed in 30 days. And then anything that isn't taken by drivers, we just give to Goodwill.
Ours is the same.
Yeah,
On the curb
anything
system.
electronic, we send to Metro so they can wipe it clean, and I think they give to Safe Nest or something.
On the curb system, if the driver reported electronically using their tablet, it actually gets recorded electronically as well. So the fleets, they have the records of that. They can go back later on that. The
I just
driver,
want to make sure the driver doesn't get in trouble, and it should be a situation in which maybe we should have that as a concern for us relative to a task the driver must accomplish after every ride. That is
Yeah,
something that
that's really tough, especially when it's
I
busy.
think that gets really technical is when that wallet is in the back seat. The passenger gets in, puts it in his own pocket.
Yep.
Now, all the little spotlight's on the driver, but
Mhm.
that happens more than everybody thinks.
And
That
that's where
driver never
cameras
knew.
come into
That
play.
driver never knew that there was a wallet in the back seat.
Should just be,
But I guess the question is, are we in a situation that's in terms of something periodically that they should check just for their own protection? If there's what's
Mike
going on,
said.
because everybody's gonna,
Like Mike says, when it's drop and load, that driver's not getting out of his car.
Yeah.
Check the
Hmm?
vehicle. It's just not feasible.
And the properties wouldn't want us to either, because they're trying to move the vehicles. There's a traffic jam
Drop and
there.
load, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But when they get a minute, I'm gonna say yes, 9 out of 10 they do.
Right, they'll kind of glance in the back, check, and then next thing you know, they're loaded and going.
And if
But-
they're getting out to unload luggage and stuff, they'll take a look, as they're getting back in, to the car and stuff. But if it's literally somebody that they're picking up and they're going from hotel to hotel, and those people get out, I mean, the driver may turn around and look back, but if they're trying to load people,
Mhm.
Yeah.
he can't, and he's not going to say, oh, well, wait, I have to get out and look under the seats in that court, And then you've got the whole thing, reasonable search, that's just a matter of opinion.
well, let me ask you another question. Okay. Passenger loses wallet, but wallet either goes under the seat or goes
Yep.
into a place that is not accessible. At the end of shift, do you guys do a thorough thing of
That
the
person
other
calls and gives
thing?
us their cab number, we will go look for it.
But in general, there isn't any procedure that you guys do in terms of when the cab comes in terms of what
Right,
you
this is different. We do check in and check out, so we check the
Our
car.
drivers are required at the end of their shift to look at the inside the vehicle and clean any contents,
Trash.
or trash and
Yeah.
things like that in there.
Nothing,
Otherwise, you
nothing,
won't
nothing,
check.
nothing under the seats, nothing in between the seats or anything like that. They don't get that.
I don't know, I mean,
Detail.
Each
right,
driver's
that's-
different.
In a perfect world, that's what we'd want to do, but I don't believe that goes on and every driver does that. But should they really have to? I mean, this person left behind him, they didn't leave it.
That's true. That's true. I'm not saying that, but I guess now I'm trying to be the lawyer for the driver. And I don't want to be accused of being a thief or anything like that. I don't want to be accused. So what do I do in order to create a situation in which you don't believe I'm a thief and neither does the passenger believe I'm a thief? What do I
That's what we download the camera.
What do I do? in-
We download the camera. They'll come in and say, the driver stole my wallet. Driver's
Right.
like, I did it. We're like, bring the car in. We'll download the camera and we can see, oh, the passenger that got in behind you put it in their purse.
We
Or
do our due
you know,
diligence on any
yeah,
complaint
exactly.
like
We
that.
do the
We're gonna
best we
do
can.
everything we can. We'll pull, like Desiree said, we'll pull video if we need to. We'll question the driver if he recalls the ride and get as much information as we can.
I just don't want the driver to be caught in a trip bag in terms of that whole situation, because as you say, the next customer could put the wallet in their purse and they see it. I mean, Why do skippers lose his week?
We've had people clean out wallets.
Huh?
We've had people clean out wallets. The next passenger gets in, they clean out the wallet, drop the wallet back on the seat, and the next passenger, or the original passenger, the one that lost the wallet, calls in and says, "Hey, I had $5,000 cash in my wallet." And I have to say, "Well, we found the wallet." I mean, there's.
And it's ridiculous
nothing
to
we can do
think the
with that.
driver would turn in the wallet if they're gonna take the money out. They're just gonna take the whole thing. They're not gonna
Yeah.
turn in the wallet, so.
And maybe just take out that first sentence. I mean,
Yeah.
or change it to be at the end of each shift, but I mean, put the onus back on the passenger that they lost the item.
Why don't we do that? Change and shift. One. How many of your cameras work?
Very well.
Because, okay, where are maybe this is a question dealing with the industry or whatever, but what is the view of the camera? Can the camera see the entire cab?
Front and back.
Front and back? They can see,
There's
they
a
can
view of
see.
the interior and a view out the windshield.
So anything that goes down in the back seat, the camera can see.
Somewhat.
Not with our
Yeah,
cameras.
Seats are gonna
Yeah.
block some of it.
Obstructed
so
by
it's
the
not like,
seats.
you know.
Yeah, you can't see.
Because the camera here, so it's got front and back from the reading mirror.
Can they see the seats of the back?
An obstructed view, yes.
Yeah.
Obstructed view.
And not everybody has the same camera system. Ours only is going to save information if there's a change in G-force or the opening and closing of the doors.
Our meter shut off.
And the model of the car is different and
And obviously, anything with any six passenger vehicle, you're not gonna be able to catch. You might be able to catch the heads and some of the stuff in the people very back.
Most important part is the accident view at the front, so that you get.
Yeah, that's.
Or actually internal, it's videos on the internal cell phone, some of our accidents. Where
Yeah.
a person's not wearing a seatbelt.
Oh, yeah.
and-
Or the
Catching
person
all
doesn't
that.
even move, and then all of a sudden, they've got every bodily injury there is.
That's all right.
That one. Five, 5551, these deals with leases. Safety month lease agreement, check for the reason for the lease agreement. Why, I guess because we approve them every 6 months from what I understand. You approve the form, you don't approve.
The template. Right.
Do I need to see it?
that would probably be a question for David. I think you. Do you need to see the lease agreement?
Yes, yes, sir. I think we do.
You do? Right.
Yes, sir. Just because I, at least at the time that I've worked for the agency, I've tried not to impose all sorts of random little things here and there that, the agency thinks we need this. I'm mainly looking for certain requirements. I don't know if it's 5555 or 5557, but it's a few regulations on where it lists out, these are things that all need to be in there. And that's mostly what I'm looking for, but I do think we need to make sure of those.
Can I ask a curious question? Because in the last lease that we reviewed, I believe it was a Lucky lease. There was you changed a word, which was kind of interesting to me. And I thought that a lawyer was involved. The reason why I thought that was because the state of the law in Nevada about what an independent contractor is very fluid sometimes in terms of legalities and things of that nature. So you changed it to another term of art. I'm trying to remember what the term
Probably
of art
leasing.
No, no, there's another term that you use, independent something,
Independent business, sir.
independent business. Why did you do that?
There's a debate going on about workman's comp
Yes.
and a few other things about it, auto insurance, a few other issues. So
That's what I thought. You know you can't wordsmith your way out of that. You know that. Because there's
That's like a debate.
there's specific standards that exist that the legislature has created as well as case law has created in terms of tests that they use as to whether someone is an independent operation versus being an employee. And we can try to wordsmith our way until the cows come home, but at the end of the day, unless the provisions of the test are met or not met, that's going to be what the call is going to be. Am I incorrect, Keith, on that one?
Man, it's
You can try. You can try.
the wording.
You can try to do it.
The wording will matter. May matter depending upon who's on the Nevada Supreme Court.
I'll defer you to our legal counsel, Mr. Awad.
Mr. Awad.
I'm just saying that you can't. That people have tried to wordsmith their way out of that one.
Jason's gonna do what Jason's gonna do till he gets caught.
Do not talk about Mr. Awad like that. He's a very nice.
Oh, I will say that to Jason's face, so it's all good.
And then there's health insurance issues. There's a broad spectrum of issues
Yes,
that
there
we
is.
want to try and.
I know, I know, but then the question comes down as to whether that word, in a legal sense, is going to be enough in order for you to get out from under. And what I'm advising is that it probably is not. But I would applaud you in terms of saying it was a nice try.
I'll pass on the word. I'll pass on the good word.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the workers' comp thing, man, I was not happy when I saw that language.
Okay, and we got 5555 with procedure for approval of lease agreement, duty administrator, appeal of disapproval by certificate holder. I think this is a change that happens pursuant to board order in terms of what we do in terms of approval of the original lease agreement. Is that right, David?
Sure.
In terms of 5555 dealing with changing that in terms of lease agreements per a board order. If they want to appeal to, if we say no to a lease agreement and they want to appeal it to the board.
I have no issue with that procedure. I don't know if the industry wants to change it, but I think, in the time that I've been here, I don't recall ever rejecting them. We've had changes made, and gone back and forth a few times, but there's never been a straight rejection. I could imagine it happening, in which case I think it's fair to give them the opportunity to appeal to the board.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question about leases in general in terms of, because we had this argument about when a lease cap should be inspected or something of that nature in terms of, because the statutes say that they're supposed to be clean, they're supposed to be in good working order, things of nature. And there was a question always existing in terms of if someone gets it for a 6-day lease or gets it for a month lease, does that abrogate the company's responsibility to make sure that vehicle is in good working order? Because let's say your lease or is not as neat as they need to be. Do you feel as the company owners that are jointly and separately liable for that vehicle that maybe you should have more of some control over inspection of that lease vehicle to make sure that when it's going out there, if something happens, that you're not going to be liable relative to that? Am I being too sensitive to what I'm trying to
Well,
say here?
there is verbiage in here that says the company is required to see the vehicle once a day, which
Right,
is something that we're trying to
sometimes
expand.
people don't do that sometimes. Sometimes they say, well, if you got the vehicle for 6 days, you got the vehicle for 6 days. Is there a responsibility for them to come in once a day?
They have to. It's written in here that they have to come.
They have to come through our pumps at least once a day.
Right, that's written in here. That was one of the things I believe we wanted to change. But right now they do have to come once a day. And just talking from my company,
Right.
my lease drivers probably keep their vehicles cleaner than my employees.
Absolutely.
Because they see it as their own business, their own car. They have that every day. I wish my employees took care of the car as good as my lease drivers.
Let's hear from anybody else on that one.
No, it's 100% true. The lease drivers are taking better care of the vehicles in general. Now, I won't say that's again, there's a small group of people that just don't like to take care of their vehicles as well as employee drivers. And there's certain groups of lease drivers that don't take care of their vehicles as well as they should, but we see that, we correct the problem, and we go on from there.
Now, what do you do when they bring it in to gas it up or whatever once a day? Do you guys do like a quick inspection of it, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we do too.
We have a
Our
checklist. we go
servicemen are the only ones that can pump gas, and so they're there also to offer, to drive it through the car wash, and there's trash cans right there so that they can dump, somebody left a 7-Eleven cup in the back seat that they had or whatever, they can throw everything out right there.
Check the oil.
And if
do-
it's a dirty car, we charge them a fee.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're a pig, you're going to pay for being a pig. If we're going to have to clean that car and have our company detail it.
Our meters will redline if it's not seen within 24 hours and inspected.
Oh, okay.
The meters will just lock out and say this meter's out of service. You cannot operate this, cab, please report to the yard. Unless they come to the yard, it's seen by an inspector. We go through the checklist, hit go, and it clears the meter, puts it back in service.
So why do we have a problem for the one a day? You guys want to do more than one a day? Is that what you're asking me?
Only because some drivers take a day off. Right now, the language says it has to be seen every single day, but
Well, and-
every single 24 operating hours would probably be a better way to do that. Whereas if the meter is in service for 24 hours, then it gets inspected.
I like once a week better.
I would like once a week.
Once a week would work just fine as well. I mean, I'm good with either one, but
Yeah.
that would coincide with how we're kind of doing things right now. But
Because
once
I
a
mean,
week is
for
sufficient, too.
the most part, even the guys that even have a 6-day lease, I mean, they have to come into the pumps and everything, and not everybody offers fuel. We have our own pumps, and but it is kind of a pain for the guys that have to come into our facility that have a CNG fueled vehicle because our CNG fuel tanks are off property, but they are still required, to come in and do the drive-through and everything. So, if it was just once a week, then that CNG guy can still go ahead and fuel up, down by the Mirage and stuff, and then just come in once a week, for the inspection and when he has to pay for his lease too. I mean, it would be much more convenient for them. And, at that point, when we do our visual inspection of it, if there's anything wrong with that cab, we're going to take it and give them a spare anyway,
What? I know you're gonna hate this one there. What if a driver, because it's their business, they want to continue to drive that cab, the cab has been the cab that they like and the cab that they want to be in, but they know that, let's say, for example, the cab has an oil leak, or the cab has a fluid leak, or the cab has something mechanical that may be wrong with it, but they want to continue to drive it until the lease term is over because this is the cab where they have all their stuff in there, little cup holders and all the other stuff like that. What do you guys do in that situation?
We would charge our
I'm
driver.
going to term his lease
Right.
in the
I'm gonna
first place.
Right. He would be
It's like,
terminated and he would be responsible for the cost of those repairs. I mean, you're driving a
And
vehicle,
I'm
you can
keeping
blow
a
that.
security deposit too.
Exactly. And any pending credit cards I got coming.
But I have a problem, this is from the authority's point of view. The authority has a problem in terms of, I don't want a passenger getting in that vehicle, even though he may think it's cool.
Then leave it
I
every
didn't-
day.
I
I mean,
didn't-
we're
I
doing it
didn't-
anyway.
I didn't
Yeah,
check.
I mean,
So
we're
would-
doing it anyway, so.
I would push it more to 24 operating hours as opposed to doing a week through a situation like that. Just to make sure that at least somebody puts physical eyes on it other than the person that is beneficially dealing with it. It puts eyes on it. I like your 24-hour operating hour idea because that should take into account anybody that is off or something of that nature. Because does that sound fair? In
That's
terms of
fine. I
the
mean,
24 operating
they're
hours?
doing it every day anyway right now, so.
It
I
just
mean,
pulls
it
staff
is what
from
it
our
is.
shop, mechanics that could be fixing other cars. They have to come out, inspect the vehicle. They're interrupted constantly anytime a driver pulls up because it's not a designated time,
That's,
you know,
that's,
And-
so it's
Yeah,
just-
there isn't any designated times on it at our place either, but I will say this, that for all the time that we've been leasing, I've probably assessed that cleaning fee because they've sent me a text gun, this is this, cab the pigsty. And then more often than not, I'm just terminating that guy's lease because, I've got people that want to lease. I'm not going to have somebody that mistreats the vehicle or mistreats customers or abuses any of our equipment in my cab. It's easier for me to term a lease than it is to terminate an employee.
right.
Because I
you
have collective bargaining agreements that cover all of that. That lease agreement, either one of us can walk away for no reason. And I'm quick to use that
And you'll have that car leased the same
the
day.
very next day, as soon
Yeah,
as it's cleaned.
so-
in our
It
case,
is what it is.
we just don't clear their inspection. We tell them, hey, go clean the vehicle. We're not going to clear the inspection. And that meter stays in red line, which means he doesn't work. I mean, it's a big, bright, flashing meter that says, hey, I'm out of service. So if he goes to the airport, he can't hire it. He can't, one of the brown shirts will see it and say, oh, hey, get out of here. You're out of service.
That's what I think it's an issue, but-
But,
I would
I mean,
prefer
that-
once a week myself, but
I know.
But it is what it is.
Let's let JJ talk about that one, okay.
Aside from the lease, all we require by law, the NRS 8838, I think it is, the cab only needs to be washed once a week and vacuumed and dusted, whatever, once a day. That's all we require. So if you're forcing them to get this car inspected, we don't, most companies don't even do that on the regular cars. So, I mean, you got the, for instance, YCS, they gas the cars, they're not doing an inspection on it, they're just gassing them and parking.
I know, but at the same time, if the vehicle has any type of mechanical problem that exists, it at least gives the owner of the car, who's jointly and separately liable, the opportunity to find if there's an issue, to make sure that that car that's going out on the street, whether it's an employee or a lease person, that it's safe for those people to be. I mean, I'm putting out the cast of horribles only because it's not to say that I believe or disbelieve what the drivers are honest and hardworking individuals. It's just a situation in which I'm looking at the point of view from human nature in terms of when we see a shortcut, we sometimes have a tendency to want to take it.
And my employee drivers are required to do a pre and post shift inspection before they take a cab off the property, and then when they bring the cab in at night. And like if there's like any kind of unreported damage or anything like that, they're financially responsible for that if it's reported by the next driver. So it's in their best interest to let us know if there's something wrong with the car, because if they don't report it, because say they don't want to have to drive a spare, like the employee drivers, but the next guy that drives that cab does report it, then the prior driver is going to pay the expense on that. And that's in our collective bargaining agreements with the unions too. So they have a vested interest, the employee guys, of making sure that they, fill out their vehicle, report and, check off any scratches on because, it's got the side view and the front and rear view of the vehicle, and to do all of that and make sure that they've covered all of their pre and post shift inspections with, the windshield wipers, the lights and all that kind of stuff, because they're going to be out of pocket if the next guy reports it. So.
Okay. That's all I have. You guys got anything else for me?
706546 F.
546.
Circle back around to it. That was dress code.
Dress code. Oh.
Do we have a subdivision?
There's conditions of employment, is that it?
Yep.
How neat do we want them to be? I don't need anybody walking around in shirts and ties. We don't need that. I don't need women wearing dresses with pantyhose. I don't need that either. My personal feeling is that if you have slovenly drivers, what will end up happening is nobody will want to get into your cab. So that's a business decision you guys get to make. Do I care? No, I don't think I care. I mean, but I don't want them driving around naked either.
No.
That would be a violation.
Just say it. I'm just saying.
Not to mention, I don't think you want to see any of our drivers naked. Period.
Well, we had at one time there was a board member that was very high on the collared shirt.
Yes.
Where I do have drivers, their shirt might not have a collar, and that T-shirt he wears is a $70 T-shirt that's more expensive than his $12 polo. So the collared shirt, I wasn't Harris, but.
I guarantee you that's not a $12 polo.
No, I didn't see the emblem, sorry.
I'm not that smart.
But that was one board member, the collared shirt was the biggest issue. And right now it's hard enough to get a driver we make sure they're clean, they smell
if they're
good.
Clean and neat and they're wearing closed-toed shoes, that's pretty much all I need.
Maybe a situation in which maybe they teach people lunch. Maybe it's one of those kind of stories. Because it's like, as long as they're neat, as long as they're clean, they don't smell or anything of that nature that offends the clients, then you should be fine. In terms of that, I'm not going to get that deeply into how the driver is dressed. Like I said, let's see, comes in dirty and
we don't want him representing us that way either.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then we need to get rid of 706540 completely.
540?
Yeah. So do we have to
There it is
submit
right
to
there,
you
yeah.
a standard
Standard
dress
dress.
appearance and?
My personal feeling is, do we need 540? I mean,
I don't think so. I
we
mean,
don't
as
need
a
540
business,
if everybody's got common sense.
as a business, it's in our best interest to ensure that our vehicles are clean and our drivers are clean and free of odor.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they're just going to get in Desiree's cab. You know, if my cab pulls up and it hasn't been washed in a month
Right.
and it's filthy and my driver looks like something that, you know, just crawled out of the woods, that person's going to pass by that cab and get Mario's cab or Desiree's cab.
Because they don't have to. I mean, even at the
They don't have to get in the first cab in the lot.
You don't have to get into somebody's particular cab. That the brochure directs you to X cab,
Right.
and you look at the person looks a little sketchy. You, I don't think you're going to get into the cab with your family.
Nope. Not at all.
No matter what the brochure says. So I'm not riding with you.
And I think that 540 is actually the better one to remove in that case and eliminate it from 543.
Right.
Because, yeah, I mean, I want my guys to be dressed nice, but the collared shirt thing was,
That was a rough
that was,
year or two.
Does that board member still exist?
No.
Okay.
Well, he's alive.
yeah. And there's nothing wrong with the direction he was going to make sure people look nice, but
About a uniform and all, come on.
Well, and you know, it was at a time where, in his defense, he thought in doing so, we would actually up our standards and improve our ability to compete against the TNCs, when in fact, it would have done the exact opposite.
it drove people towards the TNCs. It's like, oh, I can wear whatever I want instead of, oh, I got to wear a collar.
And we're trying to get drivers, not lose them. So
Are we doing better in that realm, or is there something else that we need to do in terms of dealing with that issue? And the pay issue is something that we will save for another day, okay? What can I do other than pay to help you out? Huh?
I'm not gonna go into.
Well, I'm not having any complaints on anybody getting through the system, so that's a wonderful thing. I mean, there were, pre-COVID, some issues where, people had long waits and would get frustrated because they couldn't get through the system at the TA. I haven't heard any of that in years, so.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Isn't that cool, Katana?
Well, you're more interested if we're getting fresh blood.
Huh?
You're more saying if we're getting fresh drivers.
I want to know how we get more drivers. How do we get more drivers, and how do we get more drivers to want to do neighborhoods and want to do seniors and things like that? Those are my major
Drivers need to be
my
incentivized.
major problem.
Incentives.
And the question comes down is, when we talk incentives, are we talking incentives where I got to put it on as tariffs and charges, or is it
Yes.
incentives
Yes.
in terms of looking at your financials and saying maybe you can afford a raise or two?
I mean, if you want, well.
Well, the
no,
authority doesn't
but-
have the authority to tell us what to pay the drivers, and many of us have union contracts, but, I mean, it's tough for every business right now to try to get people, and where I'm starting to see people come back into the industry that had left to go drive TNCs, but, they're leaving us and they're going to drive and truck, it's a tough gig. It's a thankless job. And it's not like anybody in media does anything to try to foster, taxi cab business. I mean, watch any local news station. And even when they're talking about drunk driving, they say, take an Uber, take a Lyft. You never hear them say, like they used to in the 80s and the 90s, take a cab.
Uber's become the new Kleenex or
Yes.
Jello instead of, tissue or gelatin.
Even if you're taking
a new
Lyft, you're taking,
catchword.
call it an Uber.
Yeah.
We do pretty good on recruiting drivers, but we lose a lot of them to leasing companies. We don't offer
make it,
leasing.
Why are you losing to them? Because they're not paying any more than you
Drivers
are.
can make more leasing than they can as an employee.
And they like the
How?
flexibility.
Well, the leases, what they're charging is a lot more attractive to the driver.
It's a business, they're taking a business risk and they're investing in themselves.
And they work a lot harder when they're working for themselves versus when they work for us.
We had a driver the other day leave, and of course, when we get a driver that let us know that they're resigning, we try to convince them to stay. And so this particular driver, she's going to go lease at another company. And so we went back the previous week, what she earned with us, compared what she would be earning under their pay plan. And it turned out to be $200 more for that week. And that's if they're doing everything properly. It's more if they're not doing everything properly. Are they claiming their tips? Are they paying their FICA? Things like that. If they're, so it's for the driver, it's a
I
better
mean, that's a
deal.
correct number, the upfront. back end. Time tax season. Pretty easy.
Right, I mean, it's gonna come back and bite
Unless you
these
wanna
drivers
cheat.
when they try to,
Unless you want to cheat.
right, if they, when there's time to collect social security,
It's
they
like an
might.
Uber and Lyft driver. Oh, look what I made. But they don't take their gas, their wear and tear, you know, they don't take any of that. They just look what's in their bank account. Oh, I make more. No,
Getting back,
no.
what's it gonna take? We do need, I mean, you can't really expect a driver to drive all the way out to Summerlin, not knowing what they're gonna get, and when it might just be somebody going down the street to a grocery store. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the companies who are paying for the gas. It's not good for the driver who wastes a lot of time in it. So there needs to be some minimum fare out there. We need some kind of dynamic pricing, or, you know, when there's events in town, you know, nobody wants to go to Alicia now because they can't get in there. But if there was some
I do
incentive,
have a question. Don't take this the wrong way.
But it's
I was at the airport about 3 weeks ago. And I was there at about 11:45 at night, because I have a tendency when I'm there picking up people and stuff like that, look around and see what's going on. And I didn't happen to see any cabs at the airport. I said, oh, 11:45 at night, maybe no cabs at the airport. Everybody was at Electric Daisy. Then I talked to my enforcement staff after Electric Daisy, and they said there's no cabs at Electric Daisy. The question I have is, where were the cabs?
Probably on the 15.
Uh-huh.
Sitting on the 15.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get in and out of the EDC.
They said they couldn't get taxi cabs. That's the reason why we busted 24 people for unauthorized.
well,
transport.
again, none of us have the number of drivers we'd like, number one, working for us. But whenever there's a big event, the same thing happens, whether it's a convention or EDC or any of that. It's hard to get people in and out. And unfortunately, a lot of times they don't bring the industry involved. Like for Allegiant, we were begging them to allow us to be part of the construction. They never brought us into it, really. I mean, I know the Chief had invited us to some meetings and stuff, and you guys did everything you could, but they never really checked with the people who are moving them in and out. That maybe we could have done a better job.
We also have, Carl, these drivers have apps. They have apps.
Right.
They know when not to go to the airport. They know when Bellagio's dumping 400 checkouts. You know, they know that. And so that's.
I was just wondering where the cabs were, because
When you
were
say
the cabs
nobody at
concentrated
the
in the-
airport, 11:45 at night, they
Yeah.
already know that, hey, there's probably 2 flights left. So what would
Right.
those guys
And,
do?
All the clubs are going,
things-
all the,
right, things could change like that. 1 minute, hey, airport's wide and waiting, we need to get cabs there. By the time, you know, we got a cab there, 10 minutes later, the pit's full. I mean, because it could change very quickly.
But these apps they're using now, it's very to the point. They'll tell you which hotel, how much checkouts, when they're coming out, when the airport's checking in, with how many flights, how many people. It tells you all that stuff. So these guys are, you know, in tune with the technology.
As
Love
a,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
as a systems provider for our clients, we have a feature called taxi stands. So the drivers, they can see waiting times at various cab stands around the city.
Mhm.
It's determined, I don't know, in partnership with our clients, which taxi stands are visible. And then, you know, through, you know, we've already, was the last TA meeting or the one before, we introduced our concept for Las Vegas for market pricing with our eHail app, and we're talking to at the executive level with all the fleets right now. But we've discovered in other markets, creating a minimum fare using algorithms, determining what's sort of acceptable to the consumer and what's sort of acceptable to the driver, has really resulted in better pickup ratios. Right. So for as an example, like you mentioned, I'll make the extreme case of Summerlin. Everybody always talks about Summerlin. So for example, you know, what is enough of a minimum fare to get a driver to go out there and pick someone up?
Pretty much. That's one of our situations.
We use our algorithms to determine what that is, and it can change. I mean, it might one day, you know, a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. it might be $5. Sunday at or Friday at 10 p.m. it could be $15, right? And I'm just making those numbers up. Don't hold me to them. But you know, we have ways to do that, and that's in our discussion here. with everybody that offline that we've been having. That's kind of what we're trying to express, that the market pricing is, you know,
The thing with that,
which
it's
would
very
require,
tricky.
of course, some
It's
regulatory
it's
changes.
very tricky,
to the rate.
because if a guy's around the airport, has to go to Summerlin, that's a 20-minute dead end, no traffic. Gets there, does a $12, $13 ride,
Right.
has nothing to come back to, and he has to drive back. He's making $4 for that hour, for maybe.
Well, what if we introduce like a pickup with a higher rate outside the strip? So meaning you'll have like a rate 2 for instance. So if you're gonna come back from Summerlin, if you're a driver, you probably would consider staying around the area to pick up that higher rate to go back to the strip or to the airport.
That's true, but Uber and Lyft killed the local residents.
You could be
taxi
sitting
cab.
out there.
but, I mean,
That's because we don't have cabs out there. that's why.
they don't even have drivers to it. That's the issue they're having. That's one of the
Well,
reasons
their
why
numbers are
they want.
coming up. I mean, they're at over 12,000 for the weekend now, approaching the 15,000. We're still in the 3,500 and change permits.
Yeah,
We're not
we do.
showing up as well as they are.
That's also part of our algorithm, is we're tracking Uber and Lyft rates. So we're tracking their rates, and we're working with the taxi meter rate. We're looking at where's that.
Yeah, they just did
Happy
another
place.
jump. I haven't really dissected the numbers, but they just did another jump, and now we're doing another jump.
So,
Technically,
Mr.
we're at
Armstrong, as far as
$40
what
for 10
Anthony,
miles.
we don't use his technology for our meters, but Captain has the same thing. So drivers have access to this in their meter. So for example, at McCarran right now, in the last hour, they moved 235 vehicles that have Captain's technology, and there's a 51-minute wait. So right now, if I was a driver, I wouldn't be staying at the airport. I'd probably go on back to the strip. But so our drivers have all this ability. Now, Terminal 3 is a lot quicker. It's a 14-minute wait. So
Like if your guys use the app, Taxi Dash.
Yeah.
They go on there and tell them how many flights are coming in, how many people are on that flight, when they're Terminal 3, Terminal 1. I mean, we use that too, because we're on the same system.
right,
But this is telling them how many people are coming out
right.
within the next hour. And to this point, 11:45, when you look, there's like nothing, right? Those guys, the guys that are in tune know, hey, why would I go there? I got 2
Right.
flights maybe for the next 2 hours.
Or there's also the Flight Aware app.
Yeah.
A
And
lot
then
of
you,
drivers
then you
use
have,
the
and then
FlightAware app.
Taxi Dash, you have the hotel checkout, Bellagio, 6 a.m., 89 people coming out. So they know that, if you're checking out 200 people, 89 people, 100 people, you know that cab stand move. You look at Treasure Island's got 20. Where are you gonna go? And that's how those guys move. It's, I don't know. But the point
Yeah.
is always back to the economic side of it.
Yeah, and that's the key. And we
And
have,
I know-
we have to figure out a way
I know
for the
that's-
economic
that's-
side so that everybody, I think that the board would feel more comfortable with things that we know what minimums are and where we are in terms of what we're talking about, so that when we're doing something, it's fair to the entire industry. That you always get nervous when things are magic and you don't know, because magic has a tendency to have problems with the general public too. The general public doesn't know exactly what they're getting. So when we do rate making and things of that nature, we want to say, okay, it's a minimum for this kind of situation, it's a maximum for this kind of situation. Where exactly are we at? We want to have benchmarks. That's basically what I'm
Right.
asking.
When Uber and Lyft were coming into the market, the TA board at the time was saying like, hey, what can we do for the industry to help you be more competitive? So some things that would help us be more competitive are one, have a minimum. Uber and Lyft have minimum fares. We'd like the same thing. So
And I think that that's not something that is beyond the pale for you to suggest, but the devil's in the details as to what that minimum would
sure,
be.
but it would actually help, like you were mentioning, somebody, maybe an elderly person, maybe they just need to get to the doctor. It's right down the street. So if the driver knew like, hey, if I drive out to Summer, at least I know I'm getting $10 because the $10 minimum fare.
Also, we also are going to try to educate the seniors that they need to understand that those trip tickets can also be used for tips for the drivers too. That they're like cash. They're not like a situation in which the elderly person
Yeah, they all know
At
that.
the end of the month,
That's how they
when
tip the
they're,
drivers.
when they're ready to expire, drivers do
Well, they
very
get them
well.
all.
Yeah, they get a bunch of them then.
They just
Yeah.
put them on. But, to this point, when Uber and Lyft started, it was hard to compete. They report to MGM, $8, $4. I can't compete with that.
You couldn't because it was being subsidized. That's
Well,
the way it
Uber and Lyft used the Walmart technology where we're gonna come into this neighborhood, we're gonna make all our prices low, we're gonna get all the mom and pops out, and then we raise our prices.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because now they're at our prices.
Yeah.
I didn't, like I said, I didn't check this late check, but we're approaching $40 for 10 miles. So that's a scary movement too. Eventually, we're gonna start seeing people not take a cab. Because if they're at that rate too, ridership is going to fall eventually because of inflation modus. People can't afford it. So that's the teeter-totter we're on right now.
Everything's going up though. The thing is, it's
Not
complicated.
going up.
Yeah, it's complicated though, because the convenience is a big part of it. I mean, when Uber started, it was more expensive than a taxi. And they were killing it in San Francisco because they were reliable. They showed up and the ride was clean. What I'm getting at is that, yes, I mean, yeah, of course, if you come in and you're giving rides for $5, you're undercutting everyone else. That's good. But if the car is not showing up in a timely manner and you're not getting to where you need to go, then that $5, the cost doesn't factor in.
Well, that's the
Because-
dynamics in Frisco.
Well,
We don't have
no,
the same
I'm
dynamics.
moving to here.
Oh.
Because what I'm saying is that the price is only relevant as long as there's service there, right? If you tell me I can get a ride for $5, but no car shows up, then that's meaningless, right? So the fact is that if people know that when they request a taxi, the taxi is going to show up, and if the driver knows that if he or she goes after the dispatch, that the passenger will be there, you're making a big achievement there, which hasn't existed because the technology wasn't really being implemented.
It did exist though prior to the pandemic. I mean, just to give you a little
How so?
historical, just like Evan said, we were getting killed. I mean, people couldn't get a cab out in these residential areas, and Uber and Lyft came in and took them all. And then we got together with Bell and Desert, and we created Cabot, a universal dispatch system. And prior to the pandemic, we had it down to under 7 minutes on the average ride from the time somebody called in till we had a cab at their front door, because it was using closest cab technology. Now, unfortunately, right now, we don't have all of our drivers back, but we will, and we'll get back to that point, I
You
believe.
still can't compete in the local areas. Uber was an 18,000 compared to what we got, 3,500 cars. You couldn't, that's where the killer mode was in the local areas, and it
Sorry?
still is.
If we could get a cab there in under 10 minutes, we're going to get a lot of our business back.
The other piece of that too is also guaranteed pay
Sorry?
when you pick those people up, which is
Right.
still a huge problem with the local.
And that's
Sorry.
probably
We're
what
way
we're
off topic.
trying to work it so that if someone cancels on you or something of that nature, that you do get the guaranteed pay.
Right.
Because my personal feeling is that it's not fair for you to call 4 different services and then you pick and choose which one ultimately you take, and then 3 services end up getting screwed.
Well, I think it's also important, though, I mean, with all due respect to your point, Mike, I mean, that's somebody calling on a telephone. That's a different customer. That person that's calling on the telephone, that's not an Uber rider. You're
True.
not going to stop using the Uber app to call someone on the telephone.
True, but they would call me and Lucky
Yeah.
and Yellow and Whittlesey, and then all 4 of us show up and they go, well, I like that.
But,
car,
I mean,
sure,
but
sure.
we have your app.
Yeah.
You know, we don't get very many rides off that either.
Yeah, but that's, right, but there's a reason for that, which is why, that's why we're trying to introduce market pricing.
Right, and I know it's worked in other markets very well, and
That's where the dynamics.
And that's why I'm talking about things like a minimum
Uber
fare.
and
and things
Lyft
like
has
that.
crippled the industry everywhere else. Here, because of our airport strip and downtown, we're sitting in front of you. And that's why Uber and Lyft can't compete with that. Because we want to be at Caesars, hey, you John, no, hey, you Tom, and the cab's right there, come on up. That's where we're different than every other city. But when you expand to the local areas, these guys still have 12,000 cars compared to us.
but no, they don't have 12,000 cars out there. very
Like
often.
last weekend, there was 18,000 vehicles out there. I monitored it all the time.
I mean,
How
prior
many
to the
do we have?
prior,
35 at best?
prior to the
I'm gonna let
pandemic,
them argue it out.
prior to the
No.
pandemic, there
Are
was
we
days
done?
where our company
Is this packet
Okay.
for the
That's
next
that-
meeting?
was doing
or-
1,000 rides off computerized. We were doing
Okay.
some days between 8 and 1,000
And the
rides off the computer.
The next workshop will be addressing what, the accounting portion?
Just the accounting portion, I have a first.
Look it up.
And there's some more vehicle stuff.
I don't believe any of their
that we missed.
statistics.
Yeah, and what I do is
I don't believe any of
All
their
right.
statistics.
Drafts.
Sorry, you didn't believe the COVID either. Okay.
In terms of some format, so we can go over the format, see if the format works.
Okay.
That's Keith. He'll tell you all
I'll
about
let you
how
kids
bad
keep-
it is.
I apologize for keeping you so late.
Certified does, right?
You gotta be back at 1:30, no?
I know.
I'll be calling in for that one.
I want you guys to have lunch. You're not.
No disrespect to anyone. I will not be at the meeting. There's really nothing of serious nature on the agenda, so I won't be here.
I-
Well, I might-
I'm
So have a
calling
lovely
in.
day, everyone.
That logic right there.
I'm gonna call in on that.
Good point, a booking fee, if they call. That's what I was thinking along the lines of, because you're right, it's not the same customer, but somebody on booking fee would say, give us your credit card, and if you cancel or, you know, whatever, so much time. that's ours.
I got
Or they cut
the
short.
data. Yeah, it's,
I love your special.
I gotta go, I gotta come to you the next times through, I'm gonna come.